Okay, great. Thank you. City Attorney, if you'll report out from closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The Emeryville City Council and the management of Emeryville Services Authority Board in closed session on the items listed on the closed session agenda. Regarding item 5.1.1, an update was provided and direction was given. That's the conclusion of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we stand adjourned. And if the city clerk is ready, I'd like to roll over to the successor agency.
One moment.
Okay. Oh, we adjourned at 7:17.
Okay, all set.
Okay, with that, I would like to call to order the successor agency regular meeting. It is April 21st at 7:17 p.m. And would like to state for the record that this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act waivers provided for under Governor Executive Order in response to the COVID-19 state of emergency. During the public emergency, City Hall is closed to the public. The agenda states that the public may view the meeting that is being live streamed online and on ETV Channel 27 and provide comments by submitting an online comment form, which will then be read into the record by staff. The comment form can be accessed by going to our main City of Emeryville website, www.emeryville.org, and clicking on Council Agendas and Videos. Once there, you will see a link entitled Submit an Online Speaker Card. Okay, do we need to do roll call, please?
Yes, I'll go ahead with that. Councilmember Bouders?
Here.
Councilmember Donahue?
Here.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Here.
And Mayor Pats.
And I am here. Okay, I'm going to call for a motion to approve the final agenda.
I move that we approve the final agenda.
Great. So I have a motion from Member Donahue and a second from Member Medina. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. And with that, we move into any ex parte communications. I went alphabetically last time. I'm going to try to do it in the reverse order this time. So I will start with you with Member Medina. Any ex parte communications?
Nope.
Member Donahue, any ex parte communications?
No.
And Member Bouders?
No, Mr. Mayor.
And Vice Mayor Martinez?
No.
Great. And I have none either. So do I have a motion for ex parte, for the public comment? Sorry, public comment for the. This is now the time for the public comment portion of the meeting. Anyone who wishes to make a comment to items related not on the agenda or on the consent agenda should have submitted your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. At this time, I will ask the city clerk whether any comments have been received via the online comment card, and if so, to read them aloud.
There are no comments.
So seeing no additional electronic submittals, the public comment portion of this meeting is now closed, and we will move to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion for the consent?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion from Member Medina, and I will go ahead and I have a second from Member Donahue. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. Okay, we do have an action item this evening. I'm going to ask that we waive presentation because we're just aligning our calendars. But I will open it up for public comment. City Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
There are no comments.
Okay. Instead of going through everybody, because I don't think there's a lot of discussion on this, I will simply say if you have comments or something, please make them now or make a motion.
I'll move the resolution.
I believe that was
I'll
Vice
second.
Mayor Martinez making Member Medina, get in there quickly with a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. And with that, it is 7:22, and I call this meeting adjourned. I'll give everybody a moment to switch over to the regular meeting before I call it to order.
Okay, all set. Thank you.
Okay, so it is still 7:22. I call to order the regular City Council meeting for April 21st, 2020. Do we need to do a roll? I think a roll call is called for, so please do a roll call.
Councilmember Bouders?
Here.
Councilmember Donahue?
Here.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Here.
And Mayor Pats.
Here. Okay. That brings us to approval of the final agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So
I
moved.
move approval.
I'm going to give it to Member Donahue and second from Vice Mayor Martinez. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. Okay. We are at special orders of the day, which I will talk about a little bit more when we talk about announcements, but we have no special orders. Committee and commission vacancies. City Clerk.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There are positions with terms that are scheduled to end on June 30th of 2020 on our Community Advisory Standing Committees, including the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee, Budget Advisory, Commission on Aging, Economic Development Advisory, Housing Committee, Parks and Rec, Planning Commission, and Public Art. The applications are due Monday, May 25th by 5 p.m., and the appointments are scheduled to be made at a special council meeting on Tuesday, June 16th. And please note that at this time and at all times, you are able to file your application online, complete it and file it online. Thank you.
Member Medina, was that clear to you?
Yes, I can hear it.
Okay, I was just making sure it was. I must have just been me, and I picked
Sorry,
somebody at random. Just so
does
you
this
know
sound
what I'm
better?
thinking about. That sounds much better. Thank you.
Okay, we've got two microphones
Okay.
going here.
Okay. Sorry. So we are now to council member special announcements, and I'm going to stick with the order. Member Medina, do you have any special announcements or reports on meetings attended?
No. No.
Okay. Member Donahue, any announcements or meetings
No.
attended? Member Bouders?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Member Martinez, Vice Mayor Martinez.
None. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I have a couple of things, and I think I mentioned this. So I have purposely not been doing special orders of the day and proclamations in light of our current situation. It does not seem appropriate. But I do want to mention two things that would have happened. Last week was National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. And I do want to take some time this evening to thank our city's 911 dispatchers for their work in this crisis. And always, before a police vehicle or ambulance races to help, it's a 911 professional who takes that call and sets the emergency response in action. Their calm voices on the phone offer comfort and help, especially now. Their professional direction and information guides the officers to the place they are needed. We appreciate you. We thank you for the work that you do, not just today, but every day. And I can't say that without talking about my own personal experience with this. We had a family crisis, 10 years ago here in Emeryville, and my wife had to call 911, and they walked her through what was the roughest time in her life. My mother-in-law had passed away in our home, and my wife had to call them, and they talked her through that process. And I will forever be grateful to the 911 professionals in town and 911 professionals in general, and particularly in this time of crisis. And I want to thank the city manager for encouraging me to do this evening, because I think it's important that we recognize them, even though I'm trying not to do proclamations. And then I'm going to give that a moment to pause. On a separate note, my plan to recognize this week was the Center for Investigative Journalism here in town, because it's the Ethics in Journalism Week as well. And I was reminded of that when I was talking to them today. This is a time where we definitely need ethics in our journalists. So with that, I don't want to take any more time. I did attend the Housing Committee meeting, but there was nothing to report. They are in the process of hiring a new director. Okay, City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are continuing our work as we've been reporting out to you. Just wanted to bring to your attention the temporary closure of Doyle Street. We are going to be putting that on your May 5th council meeting for discussion, and if you have any feedback for us, and if you hear from members of the community, if you could encourage them to submit their comments for that meeting, that would be terrific. And I just want to take this time to thank all of the staff who are continuing to work so hard for this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, brings us to ex parte communications, and again, unmute your microphones. We're going in reverse alphabetic order. Member Medina.
I received emails from the public regarding items 12.1 and 12.2.
Great, thank you. Member Donahue.
I had a couple of emails regarding those same items.
Excellent. Member Bowders.
I received the same emails that Council Members Medina and Donahue received regarding items 12.1 and 2.
Great. And Vice Mayor.
Same, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. All right, and that brings us to public comment. Now is the time for the public to comment on the portion of the meeting. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda should have submitted your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. At this time, I will ask the city clerk whether any comments have been received via the online comment card, and if so, to read them aloud.
There are no comments at this time.
Great. Seeing no additional electronic submittals, the public comment portion of this meeting is now closed. I will check in throughout the meeting, understanding that sometimes technology gets in our way. But I will look for a motion and for the consent calendar.
I move the consent calendar.
And I will second. Okay. We have a motion from Member Donahue and a second from Member Medina. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bowders.
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez.
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. And with that, the consent calendar passes. We move to public hearings. Item 11.1, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville establishing updated impact fees for the fiscal year.
Mr. Mayor, if it would please the council, I would like to request that we waive presentation.
I'm okay with that. Is everybody else okay? We'll waive presentation and, yeah, great. So with that, I will open it up to the public hearing. I have 7:31, and I will look for any virtual testimony from the city clerk.
There is no testimony.
Excellent. At 7:31 still, I will close the public hearing. And before I call for a motion, I just want to thank staff for their work on this. I looked over these, and it seems like an odd time to raise fees, but they're very, very small incremental raises that better to do this now in little pieces than have to play catch up in a few years when the economy is better. So with that, I will open it up for discussion. Again, going in the order, and I'm going to look for a motion from the Vice Mayor. So, Member Medina, do you have any comments?
No comments. I think staff for their work on this.
Excellent. Member Donahue?
No comments.
Member Bowders?
Just a thank you to staff for all their work, and I appreciate the schedule being in line with what we need.
Okay. Vice Mayor Martinez, comments and or a motion?
No comments, and I will move the resolution.
And I will second it and ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. Okay, with that,
Thank
we
you,
move
Mr.
to the
Mayor.
public hearing. We move to the public hearing for item 11.2, Resolution City Council of Emeryville, amending the City of Emeryville Master Fee Schedule for the fiscal year. I assume we're okay with waiving presentation here as well?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. I have one question in lieu of presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Great. I'm going to open the hearing. Do you want to do it before or after? You know what, Member Bowders, why don't you ask your question and then we'll do the hearing.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only question, staff, I appreciate this was presented before the joint meeting of the Budget Governance and Budget Advisory Committees. I sit on both. And I noticed in the staff report on page 3 under Police Department, staff addressed one of the questions that was raised. On page 3 under the Police Department that was raised by the committee, which with relation to document fees for crime victims was a concern that the committee had. And it states in here, there's a sentence that says, I want to quote it properly, but it just says, citizen requests crime accident reports requested by insurance companies have a fee. Crime victims are not charged for the report. And I just wanted to ask, in reviewing the document itself, the actual exhibit, it doesn't state that anywhere in the document. And so if a member of the public was looking online for our fee schedule, I just don't know how a crime victim requesting a form would necessarily convey that they are the victim. And if we're actually at a staff level checking requests, it seems silly to check people's names against who is the victim in a particular crime report. So do we have something in the schedule, or can we add a line in the schedule that says crime victims pay no fees for the incident reports they request, so that people know that and they can self-identify as a crime victim? That's my only request, Mr. Mayor. Just looking for clarification from staff.
I think it's a reasonable question.
This is City
City
Manager.
Manager?
I think if you would like to just make that as an amendment to your motion to approve the schedule, we can incorporate that in the schedule. Chief Tejada is on the call. She can jump in if there's any clarification that's needed beyond that.
Member Bowders, does that work for you?
That will be fine for me, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion pending public comment and other discussion. I will probably make a motion that includes that. Thank you.
Great. So what I will do is come back around after our discussion to you to make the motion, unless somebody else gives me a compelling reason to come to them. With that, I have 7:36, and I open up the public hearing and look for virtual testimony.
We have received no testimony.
Excellent. Okay, at this time, I'll close the public hearing. Oh, let me close the public hearing, then I'll come to you. 7:36, closing the public hearing. Go ahead. I believe that's Vice Mayor Martinez.
It is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to, when the time comes, second the motion by Member Bowders with a friendly amendment. I just noticed something that needs a correction.
What's
Okay.
that?
Well, hang on. Let's do this. Let me get any comments from Member Medina
Nope.
and Member Donahue.
I really appreciate your suggestion, John. Having paid for a report when I was a victim of a crime is just so psychologically difficult. So, and I appreciate your thinking about what that would be like going forward from a bureaucratic viewpoint.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do now is, thank you for that. What I'm going to do now is go to Vice Mayor Martinez and see if, then I'll come to you, Member Bowders, and see if we can handle this that way. Vice Mayor Martinez?
Yes, I just wanted to make a request to please include the following correction on the master fee schedule for fiscal year 2020-2021 for the Child Development Center Division. It's the age range of infants and wobblers was classified as 4 to 24 months, while the toddlers was classified as 24 to 36 months. And to avoid possible confusion that both categories include 24 months, the infant wobblers should be changed to 4 to 23 months.
Okay, thank you. Member Bowders, any other comments, or do you want to make a motion with both yours and Member Martinez's changes?
If Councilmember Martinez would just tell me what page of the red line that's on so I can make an appropriate motion, I'll do that.
I lost the page. I apologize, but I'm going to copy what I just said into the chat.
And
the
Councilor
city
Bowders,
manager is
we're
aware
aware
of
of the fee location, so we know which division it is. So
Okay, so I found it. It's on page 9. It's on page 19. So I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve this resolution and the attached Exhibit A master fee schedule effective July 1st, 2020, with 2 amendments to the staff's presentation of red line motion. On page 19 of Exhibit A, where there is a reference to infant wobbler age 4 to 24 months and toddler 24 to 36 months. In each section where it says infant wobbler 4 to 24 months, to change that to 23 months. And likewise, on page 14 of the same document, Exhibit A, in the section marked Report and Documentation Reproduction, above the line that says Citizen Request per Report, and has the fee schedule, to add one line with staff to determine final language that says Crime Victim request for a report related to the crime for which they sought assistance, $0. That's my motion.
Excellent. And Member Martinez, did you still want to second that?
I do want to second. Thank you, Member Bowders.
Okay, so we have a motion from Member Bowders, a second from Vice Mayor Martinez. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats?
Aye. And with that, we move on to action items, item 12.1, which are ordinance related to the moratorium on evictions, and I will turn it over to Mr. Gina.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I'll ask the city clerk to put my PowerPoint up.
Mr. Gina, you are very echoey.
Yeah, I hear that.
If you're using your phone, you probably need to turn your computer audio off or hit mute so we don't hear you twice.
Right.
Can't tell if you said right, or if you...
No, my apologies. Hold on just a second. Thought I had muted that. Hear myself. All right, is that any better? No.
just waive this presentation.
I move that we waive the presentation.
Wow. Okay, with that, I'm not hearing any objections to waiving the presentation. Let's open this up for public comments before we talk about reading it by title only. So this is on 12.1.1, the moratorium. City Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, we do not.
Excellent. I will entertain a motion. I'm sorry, let me go through this with let me stick to my plan here. Member Medina, any comments or thoughts on this?
I think we spoke really exhaustively about these two items at our last council meeting. So I don't have anything more to add, except for I really want to thank our city attorney, who I know I slightly just cut off, but I think this is for his own benefit at that point, for all his hard work on this, as well as the rest of the council for moving so quickly to help renters and residents in our town.
Yeah. Thank you. Member Donahue, any comments?
I just want to echo what Allie said.
Poor choice of words, but I appreciate it. Member Bowders. Member Bowders.
Just appreciation to the staff and the stakeholders who helped move this forward into the council for supporting it unanimously.
Excellent. And Vice Mayor Martinez.
I will, what's another word for echo? I will second my colleague's comment.
Okay. And with that, I will ditto what everybody else has said and look for a motion to read by title only.
Move to read by title only.
Okay, I'm going to second that on the condition that the city manager read the title and not the city attorney reading it to us twice. Unless that problem is fixed, in which case I'd be okay with Mr. Gina reading it. So you have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bowders.
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez.
Aye.
And Mayor Katz.
Aye. So I'll hand it over to the city attorney and city manager.
I'll ask the city manager
I'll do it,
to
Michael.
Thank you.
And this is we're on 12.1.1, is that correct?
Correct. That is correct, yes.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville enacting a temporary moratorium on residential and commercial evictions due to non-payment of rent and residential foreclosures initiated by homeowners associations where the failure to pay rent or assessments results from income loss due to the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. CEQA determination exempt pursuant to California Public Resources Code Section 21080B4 and State CEQA Guidelines 15269C and 15061B3.
Thank you. With that, I will look for a motion in second. I'm going to go to Member Bowders and then Member Medina, although I appreciate the work that all of the council has done on this, but I just feel like it seems fitting to go to them. So Member Bowders, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve this ordinance.
And Member Medina? Second. Okay. Thank you. You have a first by Member Bowders and a second by Member Medina. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bowders.
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez.
Aye.
And Mayor Katz.
Aye. Okay, we're on to 12.1.2, and in the spirit of what Member Medina said about having us really exhaustively gone through this, I'm going to ask that we waive presentation as well and go straight to public comment. I'll give you guys a few moments to object. Hearing none, I'm going to turn to the city clerk for public comments.
There are no comments.
Okay. And I'll continue doing our pattern. I'm going to go to you first, Member Medina, for any comments or on this item?
Nothing new on this item. Once again, thank you everyone for all the work that went into this.
Great. Member Donahue?
No comments.
Excellent. Member Bowders?
Just to say, Mr. Mayor, again, thank you, but also that by taking this action on such an urgency ordinance before the 1st of May, the council has sent a very clear message to all the residents in the city of Emeryville that everybody who is currently sheltering at home is in fact impacted by this pandemic and the stay-at-home order, and we see you and recognize you, and we are here to assist you.
Excellent. Thank you. Vice Mayor Martinez?
No comment.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to make the motion that we read by title only. And again, I think I'm going to go to the city manager. I do want to thank the city attorney for his hard work on all of this. Do I have a second for read by title only?
I'll take a second.
Okay, I heard Member Medina first, so I'm going to go with that. A motion made by Mayor Pats to read by title only, with a second by Member Medina. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. And with that, I'm going to go to the city manager. If she would read this for us, please.
Item 12.1.2, an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville enacting a temporary moratorium on residential evictions and a temporary moratorium on commercial evictions due to non-payment of rent and residential foreclosures initiated by homeowners associations where the failure to pay rent or assessments results from income loss due to the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, and rescinding ordinance number 20-002, CEQA determination exempt pursuant to California Public Resources Code section 21080B4 and state CEQA guidelines 15269C and 15061B3.
And I'm going to follow the same process I did last time. Member Bowders, would you like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, if it would please the council, I'll make a motion to approve this urgency ordinance.
Thank you. And Member Medina, would you like to second?
I'm excited to second.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'm so proud of this council and the city for these sort of things. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. Okay, with that, we're on to item 12.2, an ordinance of the City Council of Emeryville amending Chapter 40 of Title 5 of our Municipal Code on residential landlord and tenant relations. And it looks like this is Mr. Bryant, or is it Mr. Smalley?
This would actually be Mr. Smalley and Ms. Bernardo.
I'm sorry, Ms. Bernardo? You are up.
Yes, thank you, Charlie. This is Chad Smalley, Economic Development and Housing Manager. Ms. Bernardo is also on the call to help us out with this item. But I'm going to start off and I'll give you a brief presentation. If I could get the next slide, please, Sherry. Okay. I went one slide too far. If I could go back one. Thank you. So by way of background, the item before you today is to amend Chapter 40 of Title 5 of the Emeryville Municipal Code. That's the Residential Landlord and Tenant Relations Ordinance. The background on this ordinance and the origins go back actually to late 2014 in the Housing Committee. But the more recent, what it is an ordinance that is a just cause for eviction, anti-harassment, and provides relocation assistance for evicted tenants. So the initial first reading of the ordinance was on November 1st, 2016, and there were a number of changes that the City Council asked us to make to after the first reading that necessitated a second first reading, which was held on November 15th, 2016. One of those changes was to exempt single-room occupancy buildings and rooming houses from the requirements in the ordinance to pay relocation assistance for evicted tenants. The second reading of that ordinance was then held on December 6, 2016, and it became effective on April 1st of 2017. Fast forward to just a couple weeks ago, on April 7th, this ordinance was amended to provide a repayment plan for those tenants affected during the pandemic. And at the first reading of that ordinance amendment, City Council directed staff to revisit the definition of covered units, specifically as applied to SRO buildings and rooming houses. Next slide, please.
Sorry, there we go.
Okay, so under the existing ordinance, the way it is today, covered units are defined by the ordinance at the section 5-4002, and subsection A1 of that definition says that dwelling units in hotels, motels, lodging houses, and group residential, the emphasis is added on the slide, subject to Chapter 25 of Title 5 are exempt from this chapter so long as the tenants do not reside in that unit for more than 30 consecutive days. This addition of the group residential verbiage was put in the additional first reading of this ordinance. The ordinance goes on to say that group residential has the same meaning set forth in Section 9-2.211. That section is actually in the planning regulation. And that section then goes on to explicitly say that rooming house or group residential includes rooming houses, boarding houses, and single room occupancy housing. Next slide, please. So the effect of this is that the ordinance originally called out hotels, motels, and it made reference to a section of the municipal code that applies strictly to hotels, and it doesn't include any very precise definitions of what those uses are. So in order to effectuate the City Council's direction, what we have proposed in this amended ordinance would be to make the reference to hotels, motels, and short-term rentals as specifically described in Section 9-2.333. Again, that's the planning code. And then striking lodging houses and group residential and the reference to Chapter 25 of Title 5. And in so doing, this clarifies the uses that are covered and not covered by the ordinance. Next slide, please. So the proposed definition now will make reference to this planning code definition at 9-2.333, which is outlined here. And this use type also explicitly excludes group residential uses. Next slide, please. Other changes that need to happen to conform the ordinance to these definitional changes would be to delete Section 40.02C, which included that definition that I referenced earlier in the reference to the planning code, and also Section 48.04 sub E, which specified that landlords of group residential were exempt from paying the relocation assistance. Next slide, please. So the sum total of this, of these changes as proposed, would have the effect of putting single-room occupancy buildings and boarding houses back into the definition of covered units. Therefore, the entirety of the landlord and tenant relations ordinance will apply to those kinds of uses. So staff's recommendation is to introduce this ordinance by title only, take public comment, and then adopt the first reading. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Okay, we'll go to clarifying questions. We'll start with Member Medina. Any clarifying questions?
None, thank you.
Member Donahue, any clarifying questions?
No clarifying questions.
Okay, Member Bowders, any clarifying questions?
None, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
And Vice Mayor Martinez, any clarifying questions?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. For that, I will go to public comment. any public comment on this, City Clerk?
No, we've received no comments.
Okay. Okay, with that, I will go for discussion. Member Medina.
I really don't have too much to say about this item. I think there might be a suggestion for one of my colleagues.
Okay. Member Donahue.
Well, one of the things that we got an email about from Jeffrey Cloy was in our ordinance covered. If there's no COVID-19 interruption of income, then it wouldn't apply. So, his objection for that is in our ordinance. So it shouldn't be a problem for that issue.
Okay, well, thank you. Great. And Member Bowders?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to, two things. One, I just really want to thank staff for turning this around so quickly, and the presentation by Chad was excellent and succinct, and it made it really clear how the right way to transform our ordinance to cover things properly. So I think all the stuff the staff has proposed is appropriate. I do have one small red line version for one addition in light of the public comment we received in writing today. There was a question about the equitability of charging somebody $600 in rent for a room and potentially having to pay the fair market value for an apartment, and whether or not that would be covering the number of units would be put them in a large or small landlord category. As a former resident of a lodging house and a boarding house, and having represented people in SROs for a long time, I did see an ambiguity under the definitions of large and small landlord as to how many units would be requiring 4 months or 1 month of relocation assistance in the probably unlikely event in the case of a lodging or boarding house or group residential facility. It's highly unlikely that the reasons for which a no-fault eviction exists would transpire. And some of the concerns that were raised by the member of the public who operates a lodging house in our city as they pertain to what do I do if I need to renovate a room, that has not triggered the just cause eviction ordinance, because if you're not terminating the tenancy, as the city attorney and the staff have noted, they have the ability to work out that problem by relocating the person within the home to another room. But the question did remain about what is the appropriate relocation assistance that should be paid if, in fact, there is a no-fault eviction that takes place, because this will now fall into the ambit of our just cause ordinance. So I'm proposing adding a new section 3 to the ordinance that's before us tonight. That is pretty clear. It just simply goes to 5-40.02 subsections D2 of it, the definition of small landlord, and rather than create ambiguity, simply adding to the definition of small landlord that it means a landlord of 4 or fewer units or a landlord of a group residential facility of any size, and that term being defined in the same section of our planning code as staff has already alluded to, so that there's no ambiguity as to what the maximum relocation assistance would be. That will take care of that issue. It does state, though, that essentially a person who is removed from a lodging house for no fault purpose would be entitled to the greater of either their rent or the fair market value for their space, which would be the same as 1 month's rent for, in theory, a 1-bedroom. So it would be a disincentive to go through the no fault process with a person in a lodging house. But I think given the very low likelihood that this would happen, and I actually went back and looked at the videos from the prior council meetings in 2014 and 15 at which this property manager spoke, and in 40 plus years at that point of managing the property on 41st Street, he stated he had not had more than 5 evictions. So in theory, this should not create some sort of considerable cost. And so I would ask the council to consider this as an amendment to the otherwise excellent staff presentation.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor Martinez.
I just want to thank staff for bringing this forward so quickly, and thanks Member Bowders for the additional clarification in his red line.
Great, thank you. And I think I just will agree with what has been said, and we will look for a motion to read by title only. And so with that, I will come to Member Bowders.
I'll make a motion to read by title only.
Come back to you for the motion for the actual item. I'll go ahead and second that. No worries. I'll go ahead and second that. So we have a motion and a second to read by title only.
Councilmember Bowders.
Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez.
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
I will say aye, and I will look to the city attorney if the echo problem is fixed, if not the city manager.
How's this?
Oh.
Much better.
Oh, much better. All right, thank you. Apologize for the earlier technical difficulties. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville amending Chapter 40, Title 5 of the Emeryville Municipal Code, Residential Landlord and Tenant Relations, to revise the definition of covered units. CEQA determination exempt pursuant to State CEQA Guidelines 15061B3.
Thank you. Okay, Member Bowders, a motion on the item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed ordinance with the following amendment: to add a new Section 3, amending Section 5-4.02D2 of the Emeryville Municipal Code by amending it to say, quote, small landlord means a landlord of 4 or fewer covered units or a landlord of a group residential facility of any size, as that term is defined in Section 9-2.211 of the City of Emeryville, and to further amend the ordinance by renumbering all the sections subsequent to Section 3 with new numbers to accommodate that new section.
Okay, and I will go ahead and second that and ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Bowders.
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez.
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye, thank you. That brings us to 12.3, a resolution to the council approving minor scope of work changes in the amendment attached. So we have the presentation from staff.
We do.
Mr. Mayor, I believe Senior Civil Engineer Ryan O'Connell is making the presentation tonight on the quiet zones.
Yes, I am. Sorry, I had to take myself off mute.
No problem.
So yeah.
As long as you don't echo, we're good.
Yeah, I'm sound fine, right?
Sound good.
Alrighty. So with this quiet zone safety engineering project being a council priority for the past few years, we thought it would be a great time to come in for an April 2020 project status and give you some updates on some scope of work changes that have popped up over the time of this project. Next slide, Sherry. So some background on this project is in 2005, the Federal Railroad Administration issued regulations requiring horns to be sounded in advance of all public highway rail crossings. The engineers must sound the train horns for 15 seconds at a minimum as they approach each crossing.
Sorry.
And the FRA provided local communities the option of silencing them by establishing quiet zones. Next slide. So in our city, we have 3 at-grade crossings at 65th, 66th, 67th. Right now, these are have almost minimal on the supplemental safety measures that are on site. 65th is probably has the most safety measures, which is a signal plus the gate arms. It has sidewalks. 66th and 67th are pretty minimal with just the gate arms and the lights for each direction. In the Union Pacific system, these are actually Tier 1 crossings. They have the factors in play to be the most dangerous type of crossings that are in the UP system. So to establish a quiet zone, local governments need to work in cooperation with the railroad that owns the track. In our case, it's Union Pacific, and then also the appropriate state transportation authority, which in our case is the CPUC. All of the stakeholders come in together. We have a diagnostic team. So we go on site, we go quadrant to quadrant, and we talk about what type of safety engineering improvements are necessary to effectively reduce the risk associated with silencing horns at these crossings. They take into consideration the traffic volumes going across the track, the train traffic volumes, the accident history, and then other physical characteristics of the crossing. Next slide. So what's needed to create a quiet zone? You need these things that are called supplemental safety measures, SSMs for short. This could be medians on one or both sides of the track, 4-quadrant gate system, extra pedestrian facilities such as fencing, a gate arm system, and then the ultimate supplemental safety measure to do at a crossing is actually to close the crossing. Next slide. So in late 2017, Council gave us approval to go for a grant as part of the 2017 approved SB1 gas tax. It gave a lot of funds into the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, which typically pays for grade separations and major rail projects. But with the extra funding that got put into it in 2017, they started to fund a few at-grade projects such as quiet zone projects and safety projects at grade crossings. We applied in January 2018 with the help of the City Council. Special thanks to Councilmember Bowders, who helped rally the community and put together a support letter. We got a ton of support throughout the community about this project. A lot of complaints were coming in prior to it, and they were happy to see this opportunity pop up. We heard back in June 2018 that we were awarded the grant. The grant was for $6.48 million. $480,000 of that is for the environmental design phase, which we use local funding for. The construction end of things was $6 million with a local match requirement of 30%, which we were able to get from ACTC to help support on this project. It was consistent with all the ACTC goods movement plans, the Alameda County, regional transportation plans. Next slide. So our steps completed to date, we hired a design consultant shortly after hearing that we got the grant. We had a field diagnostic meeting with all of the stakeholders, which is UP, the FRA, CPUC. We progressed through our design, and as the designs started being shared with Union Pacific, we started noticing that they were requiring a little bit beyond what we anticipated. So we went to CTC in June 2019. We got a 12-month extension for delays related to UPRR negotiations. In late 2019, we signed a preliminary engineering agreement with UP that got them to start their end of the design on this project. We had a second field diagnostic meeting to really meet about 66 and 67th to talk over what the possibilities were there. What came out of that meeting was a request to do a closure study to look at closing both 66th and 67th. We finalized our closure study. We shared the results with UP in our negotiations, and I'll share a few details on some later slides about that, but we started to design on a signal at 67th and Shell Mound and the design of the 66th Street closure. And then early this year, we executed our preliminary engineering agreements on 66th and 67th, which was a huge milestone on the project, getting UP to kind of add the next step of approving our scope of work. Next slide. So our original project scope as part of the grant application was basically what you see here. This is the three crossings at 65th, 66th, and 67th. We have it kind of sideways. It's not north-south. But there are 4 quadrant gates at each crossing. We were talking about doing that with raised medians, sidewalks, and other additional safety measures at each crossing. Next slide. So as part of the discussions on scope of work with Union Pacific, it was indicated from UP that they would not agree to any quad gates at 67th Street unless we did a queue prevention strategy. So a queue prevention strategy is either a signal or something to help stop traffic from coming towards the crossing as if there's a traffic event on I-80. So if there's an event on I-80, traffic typically backs up on Shellmount Street. It goes past 67th Street sometimes. I've seen it go as far as 65th Street. We could not have that happen if there is a train event happen at the same time, because people going west across the tracks have nowhere to go to if it's backed up, especially if you think of a big rig truck or a large truck and trailer. So they wanted something to help prevent that. And what we ended up negotiating was a traffic signal, which is also called a pre-signal when it's installed at an at-grade crossing, and it would be similar to the 65th Street signal, and this helps alleviate the concern. So also from the closure study recommendations, we are proposing the scope change to close 66th Street to all modes of travel to keep the 67th Street and then also to keep the 67th Street at-grade crossing open with added pedestrian bicycle facilities. Since the goals of this project are to install safety improvements at each of the at-grade crossings, and the closure of 66 would, let me start that over. So since the goals of this project are to install safety improvements at each of the at-grade crossings, the closure at 66 would be the highest rated safety improvement that could be put in at this location. A closure removes all conflicts between trains and all modes of travel at the crossing. The closure study concluded that the closure of 66 would not be detrimental to the overall circulation patterns for all modes of travel, including emergency services. What it did show was that if we did close that, it changes the circulation patterns and adds traffic to 67th and 65th, and it necessitated the need to create a signal at 67th and Hollis. So this 67th Street and Hollis Street intersection has often been a concern from the community to install a traffic signal there. And by putting this in, it improves the east-west connectivity for both pedestrians and bicyclists who choose to use 67th Street corridor to access Aquatic Park. The access to the bus stops on Hollis Street are improved by adding a signal here at this intersection. And then trucking safety and activities in the corridor, the North Hollis area, are improved by signalizing, and it makes it a safer crossing for all modes of travel. Next slide. So our revised project scope is now to install 4-quadrant gates, ped gates, raised median, and sidewalks at 65th and 67th Street. What's shown in this picture shows a big kind of mast arm, gantry arm. We would not have that, but everything else at that crossing on the picture on the left, we would have. It's 4-quadrant gates, kind of a ped gate, and then fencing and kind of a corral for pedestrians to go through. We would be closing the 66th Street at-grade railroad crossing and installing a pre-signal at 67th Street and Shellmount Street, and a traffic signal at 67th Street and Hollis Street. Next slide. So the next steps for our project are we are going to be going to the June 2020 CTC meeting in Sacramento. It'll most likely be held virtually. We'll be asking for a time extension amendment. So they have already given us a 12-month time extension. They have recently, as of the last couple weeks, put out revised guidelines to allow for an additional up to 20 months in total for your time extensions due to COVID-19 delays and uncertainties. So we will be asking for that because we have experienced that. We will also, at their direction, if they allow, we'll be doing the approval for an amendment request for our minor scope of work changes that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. With that, with our extended, due to the COVID-19 delays schedule, we'll be going to the December 2020 CTC meeting for our approval for funding allocation. And that will start the clock for the timely use of fund policies and getting a contractor under contract. With that anticipated schedule, we will be advertising and beginning construction in summer 2021 and finishing the project in summer 2022. Next slide. So what we're here today for is to ask the council to consider these following action items. approval of the minor scope of work changes described in the amendment request letter to the California Transportation Commission, and then approval of the street closure at 66th Street at grade road crossing. The street closure at 66th Street, I do need to say that we would not be closing it immediately. There would be a public outreach process that goes along with it. And part of the Street and Highway Code and the California Vehicle Codes, we will need to notice the area with signage prior to doing so. Right now, it's looking like the earliest possible with our construction schedule would be July 1st. So that's what we're setting the date to be, July 1st, 2021. And that's what we have here for you to consider.
Thank you. Okay, clarifying questions. Member Medina.
Second time I've gotten that presentation, it gets better every time. Thank you, Ryan.
Great. Member Donahue.
Have the businesses on 66th Street been notified of this?
We have not fully notified them yet. It's something that we don't want to put an item like this out there prior to getting approval from the CTC and the council.
Okay.
Member Bowders, question.
Just one question, Ryan. Does the new traffic signal that's required at 67th and Hollis, is that going to be able to be covered by the $6 million of CTC and ACTC matching funding, or are we going to be out of budget with that, and if so, by how much?
Right now, our cost estimate shows that the savings that we get from closing 66 and not having to put in all those extra improvements will cover the signal at 67th and Shellmount and 67th and Hollis. So right now, we're under budget still. So we're hoping to stay there.
Very happy. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Wow, sweet.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I think that was most excellent. I'd like to open it up to public comment now. Sherry, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay. With that, I will go to discussion. And Member Medina, any discussion on this?
I'm in full support of the scope changes and the necessary street closure, and I think staff are working to move this through so quickly.
Thank you. Member Donahue, any comments?
There's a small amount of public parking that's going to be lost. Did you look at that and see if that would dramatically impact any small businesses in those areas? Sort of a question for Ryan.
Yeah, specifically on 66th Street, we'll have to be creating a turnaround area for emergency vehicles to turn around on the block. So there will be some lost parking on that end. But if you're familiar with the North Hollis area, it is kind of a free-for-all in some of those areas at the end of the block where there's not official parking spaces. It's kind of just people parking in driveways. So we will work with the business owners in that area to hopefully accommodate what they need for their parking needs out there.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Member Donahue. Member Bowders, question or comments, I mean?
I just want to thank staff and in particular Ryan. We've dealt with CTC, the UPRR, ACTC, everybody on this, but it is coming along fantastic. It's everything I could have ever imagined and dreamed, and I know that many residents in the Christie Core and on the North Hollis neighborhoods are going to be very excited when we get this under construction. So thank you for all your work.
All right, thank you. And I too want to thank staff for the work on this. I appreciate this presentation. I love the plan. I want to thank those who were involved in getting funds for us. This is awesome. I will entertain, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Martinez, I skipped you. Comments?
No, that's all right. I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Okay. I knew that psychically in advance. And I keep going for the ease to an individual to make a motion. Please let me know if it's uncomfortable for me to feel like I'm controlling everything. But if you're okay with it, I'll continue it. And with that, I will go to you, Member Bowders, for a motion on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate everybody working together on this, and I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to approve the minor scope of work changes.
Okay, and I'm going to second it in the ease of time and go to a roll call vote.
Councilmember Bowders.
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez.
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. Okay, thank you. That brings us to 12.4, legislative priorities and city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we have with us virtually our lobbyist, Nicolo DeLuca from Townsend. He's provided you an enormous amount of information in your packet, and I think we'll be giving you an overview of that, and particularly focusing on some of the potential funding opportunities that hopefully will be available. So, Nicolo, you're still on the call.
Absolutely. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
We can.
So, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Vice Mayor, and City Council, Nicolo DeLuca from Townsend Public Affairs. Normally, this time of year, the report that I have before you is talk about the bills we want to support, the efforts we want to work in, what we like in the budget, and how we want to push that forward. But obviously, starting May 4th, everything has changed completely. As the city manager said, there is a tremendous amount of information before you. I do want to say I'm very, very proud of our team, both in Sacramento, but more importantly in Washington, D.C. We provide daily updates to the city, and we make sure they're very succinct and to the point and helpful. So as a firm, we've really been throwing our entire team on this issue. What I think might be easiest is just to take questions. Let me tell you what we're working on specifically for the city of Emeryville. Mayor, thank you for quickly turning around that letter. We're working on specific issues for you guys. Specifically, number one, there was money from the Federal CARES Act that goes to the state. We're working to get some local allocations going. Number two, as it relates to homelessness, we are working on whatever homeless funding will be in whatever form the budget will look like. We're working to make sure that the money, if it can't get to you directly, it gets to you very, very, very quickly. And Senator Skinner's been very helpful with that. Number three, we've been working on coming up with a pool of funding for rental assistance due to potential just massive waves of unemployment and making sure people can stay in their homes. Number four, we've been working aggressively to help the card room and as a coalition help card rooms get open or access some of the funding that could be available because we know how important that is to the city. What we're looking at right now, and as of right now, today, May 4th, the legislature could come back, send a note to you all about what that could look like. We sent it this morning. All members of both the Assembly and the Senate, they're dramatically paring down their bill package. If it's not COVID related, it either has to be related to homelessness or wildfires. So a lot of legislators are cutting down their bills to maybe one or two. Policy committees are narrowing down the bills because they just frankly don't know when they're going to come back and what the time frame is going to look like. So as of right now, May 4th, they're scheduled to come back. Both the Senate and the Assembly have had their first budget hearings. It's been informative and it's been helpful. The budget will probably be adopted as a workload budget, so just baselines from last year. As you know, income taxes aren't due until July 15th, so we're not really going to have a great sense until August of what the state revenue proposals are going to be. So basically, workload budget gets adopted, and then a tremendous amount of budget trailer bills from August on. So that's where we are. Happy to answer any questions. One of the attachments is a COVID-related funding matrix. Happy to work with the city on any of the funding opportunities that you see fit. We're already working with the city on some normal state grants that are coming out unrelated to COVID, but a COVID matrix, happy to get after that. We'll stay in close communication with the city manager, with Chad, on whatever you all see that looks appealing. So with that, happy to answer any questions. I do want to be respectful of your time, of your agenda. And as the city manager said, there's a lot in the reports that we attached.
I appreciate you being respectful of our time, but just keep in mind we have no other place to be. So with that, I will go to
Well said.
I will go to Member Medina for questions.
Yeah, Nicola, I think the most frequent question I'm getting locally is about what support we can offer small businesses. I know that the CARES packet, the PPP funding was oversubscribed, and that a secondary portion is going out today. Likely also going to be over-applied to. Is there any money coming from the state or the county that we could more quickly get into the hands of small businesses who need it?
Great question. So what I want to do after this call, I know our firm, we did a little PowerPoint on some small business funding, so let me get my hands on that and shoot it over. To answer your question directly, the state, what we'll see on what the state's going to propose to use for their CARES funding will be in the governor's May revise, which should come out around May 14th. So right now, all the money the state is spending is at the governor's direction per the legislature giving him $1.1 billion. So to answer your question directly, long-term programs for small businesses to be determined, though a lot is going on. The governor does his daily press conferences, which have been extremely helpful. He has been announcing programs as they're being created, whether it's about meals for seniors or funding for child care or funding for undocumented folks. And a lot of that, the meat is still being put on the skeleton. So as it relates to the state and small business funding, I will send you a summary that we did on the federal side. A lot of that money is drying up. On the state side, it's still to be determined. Happy to advocate for specific needs that you are looking for your businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Donahue. Any questions?
No, don't have any questions.
Great. Member Bowders.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two questions. One, under the $5 billion of federal money through the Community Development Block Grant program, $2 billion of it goes through the existing CDBG entitlement program. We are not a direct allocation jurisdiction because we don't meet the criteria for that, but Alameda County is, and I just wanted to confirm, will we just get our apportioned share of this block of money the same way we currently get CDBG funds?
That is my understanding, yes. For CDBG funds, based on the allocation, they wanted to get that out immediately and formulaically. So the answer to that is yes. I also realize, Allie, with regard to your question about the county, they do not yet know how they're going to be spending their portion, and I do know that the Alameda County mayors, as obviously you all have been working on, trying to get some of that funding from the county. So sorry I didn't answer that question, but Councilmember Bowders, back to you. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. And then the other question I just have in your handout is related to the $3 billion for rental assistance protections. Can you just summarize who the eligible recipients are? I'm just curious whether or not the city's newly created emergency rental assistance program, that fund, if that would be an eligible recipient.
I don't know if that fund is an eligible recipient. Let me find out and get back to you right away on that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Member Bowders. Vice Mayor Martinez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems like the federal government has washed their hands of being of any assistance with the testing for COVID-19. And wondering if there's anything happening at the state level regarding the standardization and expansion of testing, especially for first responders and essential workers, and then for the public at large.
In the package that's going to the president today, there's more money for testing. As we all know, though, the devil's always in the details. I talked to our DC team, and they said local government should be eligible to receive some of those funds. As it relates to first responders, I have heard there have been some concerns about the lag in getting those tests. When I reached out to the governor's office on that and said, hey, first responders, how do we make sure they get their tests? they were extremely clear. They're like, you've got to work through your county OES, you got to work through your county OES, and then they run that up the food chain. So with regards to testing, I'm under the impression that the money that Congress is approving that going to the president soon for signature should include testing money for local governments and other forms of government. And then with regards to first responders, yes, go ahead.
I was just wondering if there's a path outside of county OES. If we had access to testing, so for instance, there's a company in Emeryville that's developing an antibody and antigen test. Not ready to hit the market yet, but it could be in as soon as 8 weeks, and it's a 15-minute assay. So if we had access to that test, would we be able to get it and get reimbursed through the funding stream that you discussed?
Let me look into that. My understanding is you would be. My understanding is also on the reimbursement. For a lot of it, it's up to 75% due to some of the FEMA requirements. Let me talk to you offline to get more information on what you're doing for testing, because I really think that's something that we need to highlight to the state to help speed up all the testing. And especially if you have a local business that's going to be ready, whether with improved testing or antidotes or what have you, let's talk further, let's publicize that, and let's just make sure the state knows that's an opportunity, because I think it's been clear testing has been a major Achilles heel because no one really understood its absolute magnitude. So happy to jump on that too.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, thank you. And Member Medina stole my question. So with that, I will open it up to public comments.
We have received no questions.
Clerk?
No comments received.
Great. Okay, because we had some very thorough questions, I do want to quickly go around. Member Medina, any other questions or comments on this item?
No, thank you.
Member Donahue?
No.
Member Bowders?
No, thanks, Niccolo.
No problem.
And Vice Mayor Martinez?
No more comments, but I just wanted to thank Townsend for the really great updates that we've been getting. It's better than CNN.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'll let our GC team know, and I'll quote you directly, better than CNN. And just to be clear, my follow-up is for the $5 billion rental assistance. See who's eligible, and then also on testing. I'll work with the city manager to get more specific so we can offer up the company that's doing the test, or will be doing the testing, as another state resource.
So I will second what Vice Mayor said. I agree these updates are better. I think when you share out with your colleague in Washington, you can say the opinion of CNN in California is significantly higher than the D.C. area at the moment. And with that, thank you. And we'll move on to 12.5.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. The fire contract.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is your city manager bringing this to you, and I apologize, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation for you. This is I'm asking your approval of a resolution authorizing me to execute a First Amendment to the existing agreement between the City of Emeryville and the Alameda County Fire Department. We do have on the line tonight, I believe, Chief Rocha and Chief Yoder, if there are questions, but I will briefly go through the background on this and then open it up for questions. You have a report in your packet with a number of attachments, including the First Amendment to the contract. As you know, City of Emeryville first began contracting with Alameda County Fire in 2012. That initial agreement went through 2018. In 2018, the council authorized a new agreement, which was a 2-year agreement, which has the opportunity for two 2-year extensions. What I am proposing tonight would be the first of those 2-year extensions. Essentially, the services continue as they have been provided for the last 2 years under the terms of that new agreement. Alameda County Fire Department provides fire suppression and emergency response services as well as fire prevention services. The contract required the department, ACFD, to provide an analysis, which is included in your packet, of the services that have been provided. Chief Yoder also attends all of the Public Safety Committee meetings and provides monthly data at those meetings as well. But at a very high level, the analysis that the department provided indicated that ACFD met or exceeded the response time standards for first alarm assignments that are in the contract. With regard to fire prevention, one thing I do want to highlight that was new in the 2018 agreement was the assignment of a deputy fire marshal to work on site alongside our community development department. Deputy Fire Marshal Cesar Avila has been a really excellent addition to the development team here in Emeryville, has worked very well with the staff. In fact, has been on site during the shutdown, continuing to provide fire plan check and fire inspection services to keep the operation going. So we've very much appreciated that partnership. Just a reminder that as a part of this contract, the city continues to own the capital assets of fire stations 34 and 35, as well as all of the fire apparatus. We own that. We are responsible for paying for major maintenance of both the stations and also the fire apparatus, although ACFD manages the fire apparatus maintenance for us at ACFD's maintenance center. And then finally, the proposed 2-year extension. The cost of the first year is $7.8 million. That is included in the 2021 budget. The projected cost of the second year is a little bit over $8 million, and that would be included in the next 2-year budget that would come to you next spring. And that open for questions.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, Member Medina?
No questions, thank you.
Member Donahue?
No questions.
Member Bowders?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one question, City Manager. In the report that was done for the analysis, it was very comprehensive. The only part I didn't understand that maybe was in here somewhere I missed where was the cost analysis compared to do a comparison. Did the City of Emeryville compared to the City of Pleasanton to provide operating budget, number of FTE, and cost per FTE analysis, as well as cost per company? I just wasn't clear why that city was hand-selected as the comparison city, if there was any context for that.
And I would defer that answer to Chief Rocha or Chief Yoder, who prepared that report.
Okay.
Yes,
Are they on?
And I believe they're on the line.
Yeah, this is Chief Rocha. Could you hear me now?
Yeah.
We can, yes.
Okay. So the City of Pleasanton was chosen. We unfortunately in the East Bay do not have another department that is a two-company department to compare to. We had recently done some work for Livermore and Pleasanton, so we felt that using that budget and the FTE count was an easy way to go about doing it. I think in any comparison that you would do to an agency in the East Bay, the Alameda County Fire Department would be out as being the much more efficient and effective in terms of services for you.
Okay, so just to clarify, it was because they were also a two-company department.
No, they're actually five. They actually have 5 companies
okay.
in the City of Pleasanton, and then there's 5 companies in the City of Livermore for that department.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor Martinez? And Vice Mayor, just so you know, I'll be coming to you for a motion on this because you sit on the county board for us.
Thank you. Are we just going, this is just clarifying questions, correct?
Just clarifying questions.
I don't have any. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I want to thank the city manager and Chief Rocha for the work on this. I sit on our public safety, and I filled in for Vice Mayor Martinez at the county level, and so I follow this very closely, and I really appreciate the quality of service we get and the thoughtfulness, and this is probably one of our last meetings with Chief Rocha at the helm, so I just want to say thank you to him in particular and open this up to public comment.
We have no comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, I'll go around for discussion. Member Medina.
I support extending the contract for 2 more years.
Great. Member Donahue.
Their basic cost of living seems reasonable. I mean, that it's a 2-year contract, I'm a little concerned in that we just don't know what our economic reality is. But Alameda County is so much better for our city than when we had our own fire department. Much more thorough ability for us to handle different kinds of emergencies. So I just think that we're getting a good deal with them.
Great. Thank you, Member Donahue. I believe, and City Manager, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe the reason that this is that the term is what it is because it's an extension of the prior contract, and so we are just executing a term in the prior contract. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So was that clear, Member Donahue?
Yes.
The term? Okay, great. Thank you. Member Bowders?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank the men and women of the Alameda County Fire Department and Chief Rocha and Chief Yoder for their service, and I support the city manager's recommendation to extend this contract.
Great. And I'm going to make my comments now before I go to you, Vice Mayor. I just want to again echo my thanks for all those involved, and also point out that Alameda County Fire does run their own dispatch, and so those are people who are also on the front lines, relating back to what we opened the meeting with. And with that, I will go to you, Vice Mayor, for comments and a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to thank Chief Rocha for his service to the county. I think we get exemplary service from Alameda County Fire Department. Not only do we get economies of scale from the administration, we have exemplary staff, we have access to training facilities and equipment that we just wouldn't have as a small city with its own department. So I am fully in support of this item, and I'll move the resolution.
And with that, I will second it and move to a roll call vote.
Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats?
Aye. Thank you. And thank you, Chief Rocha and City Manager, for that. Moving on to 12.6, which is the reinstatement of the Poet Laureate. Is Ms. Evans going to present, or?
I am available to introduce the item if you would like me to highlight some of the issues that I would love to hear feedback from the council on and the prior process.
So, so this is my item, and I'm going to ask that you do that, and I'm going to just frame it of, I think, Ms. Evans has done a wonderful job with this program in the past. She has expressed to me some of the challenges, and so I'm really thankful and glad that she's here to talk first person, because I would not do it justice. And so with that, Ms. Evans, I'm going to ask for you to speak.
Absolutely. So as highlighted in the staff report, we have had 2 prior Poet Laureates, the first being Janelle Moon, serving from 2010 to 2012, and then Sarah Kobrinsky following in 2013-2015. And I think for the sitting council, Sarah may be the face of this program. She has continued to have a presence in Emeryville with her husband as a poetry studio, and has been continuing to be involved in events at the Celebration of the Arts. That has been an ongoing presence of the literary arts through those ongoing shows since her departure in the formal program in 2015. After she served, we did a solicitation anticipating just moving forward with the 3rd Poet Laureate. The dearth of respondents left us uncomfortable bringing a recommendation to the council. We solicited a second round of solicitations and expanded the scope to the 94608 zip code so that we could perhaps get additional applicants that identified with Emeryville, used the services of Emeryville, but maybe didn't fall within our strict boundaries. That did not expand the strength of the applicants, and we did not feel comfortable bringing something forward. The other thing I'd like to highlight in that process is that we predominantly used our activity guide, our discussion, our email networks, but for the most part, the physical outreach that we did were through our cafes and informal meeting places. So community spaces and other locations that are now not available to us. So that's a challenge in how we've done distribution in the past that I think we're going to need to be strategic about thinking about how we would overcome, particularly given the dearth of responses that we had. So there are certainly questions back about creative ideas for methods of solicitation. And then I think the other narrative that this has entered into is the community grants program. I have not followed that process in specifics, but I do believe there have been poets in the schools that have been funded through that, and there may be some synergy through whoever has received applications in that process. So I think for me to be able to bring something back to the council, if you do wish to pursue this, I would certainly be seeking a direction on format. Maybe there's nominating somebody that is particularly desired by the committee, something different than the kind of solicitation we've done in the past. And then are there themes with this call within the moment of COVID-19? Are there particular themes we want literary arts focused on? And then our methods for that solicitation. And then I'm available for any questions, of course.
Thank you. Let's do clarifying questions and we'll open it to the public. So, Member Medina, any clarifying questions?
No.
Member Donahue?
Is there, Amber, do you have a sense that there could be new interested applicants for this within our city?
I have not had inquiries made to me since, and I did reach out to Sarah and say, was she aware of someone in the community that might be interested in serving, and I didn't hear back from that. My search of meetups and other literary arts that perhaps the lay public is did not identify that there was, as we have Berkeley Film Foundation, that might be an organization to go to. We don't have an organization that in the past or right now I have connections into.
Any other questions, Member Donahue?
No, thank you.
Okay, Member Bowders.
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
No questions, thank you.
Sherry, do we have any public comment on this item?
There are no comments.
Okay. So with that, Amber, can you restate the questions that you would like answered this evening?
Sure. Specifically, is there a program format that the council would like to take? Meaning, in the past, the poet has solicited other poems and poetry and been the curator of those and put those on the Emeryville round. Or they have taught classes at either the school or the Golden Gate Library. So there have been a wide variety of different tasks. And so if there is direction about the expectation of those roles or specific opportunities that might be sought in that way. Themes, meaning Is there a specific type of either literary form or the nature of what the purpose of those discussions are? Meaning, is it about recovery or resiliency or something that is specific to COVID-19 perhaps? And then the methods of the solicitation. I think knowing that perhaps as you sit in the community, if there are recommendations you can give to staff, as we see any of the ways that we would normally communicate cut off because of the conditions of the pandemic, are there some other ways that you would suggest we could be effective in getting the solicitation out, given the problems we've had in the past?
Okay. So just to summarize, the three things that you're looking for us today is a short discussion of the program format. What would the Poet Laureate do? Are we looking for any particular theme or type of poetry? And finally, some ideas of how we would be able to throw a wide net given the constraints of the day. Did I capture that correctly?
Perfect.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, this is Christine, and just to weigh in, the sort of the foundational question that we need you to, if you choose to take action, is whether to in fact reinstate the program. So that would be the first item would be that, and then once you've made that decision, what the program looks like.
Great. So I think I'm going to talk a little here because this was something that I brought to the table. I think for me, my hope is that we can reinstate it. I want to say thank you, Amber. I think you've really opened my eyes that I don't know what it is in my world, but I run into poets outside of Emeryville way more often than I'd like to admit. But so I just assume they are everywhere, and we would get plenty of them. I hear you that I run in a very weird circle, and so in town that might be a challenge. But I do know we have a new college in town. We do have a lot of art movement, and people are being more introspective at this time. So I do hope to reinstate it, and so I'm going to sort of throw that question around to my colleagues and see if they are in agreement that we should reinstate this to answer the city manager's question. So, Member Medina?
I don't have a super strong opinion about this. I understand that there's limitations to the program just based on our city size. As long as it's not something that's particularly expensive or takes up a lot of staff time, I'm all right with it.
Okay. Member Donahue?
Well, we are going to get a new art center functioning. I mean, relatively soon in relation to all things being considered. And I think that having the literary arts have representation at that art center, I think would do us a great service. And the poetry that has been at the Emery-go-round or involved with Emery-go-round, I just think added something to our city. And I think that relative to the cost, the consideration of the meaning of any moment in the public space being available, I think is significant. I think it's a worthy pursuit to reinstate this program.
Thank you. Member Bowders?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to appreciate you for your focus on this and its interest and relatedness to our community and the people who live here. So I am supportive of your request to bring this back. The only thing I would note, because I want you to get credit, I think, for all of your interest in this and putting this on the agenda, and I think you got dealt a rather shoddy set of cards with the timing of this agenda item in relation to a number of real-world events we're going through. And I haven't, for myself, I guess I haven't thought enough about what that means, and I would just I would just put to you as something for consideration moving forward with this, the optics of how putting a grant out for a poet at a time when a lot of people will be facing a financial crisis, how to narrate that. That would be my only recommendation. I fully support what you want to do on this, just to be cautious about how the public will receive that and what opportunity there might be for misunderstanding if we don't communicate it carefully. Because I think, as you and Amber both noted, the normal channels that we would use to solicit and recruit and find appropriate people will be kind of diverted from us. And so you're going to have to find new ways to do that, I think, and that could pose interesting types of challenges. But I really want to praise you for this, because I think that on the backside of what I just said is the fact that people do need something positive and uplifting. And so I have one comment related to the set of 3 questions you have when we get to that, but the threshold question, I support you.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor Martinez?
I'm happy to support your leadership on highlighting the literary arts in Emeryville.
Okay. So, thank you. And I want to thank my colleagues. I think this does give us support. To Member Bowder's point, I think the optics on this is that at this point in time, anything we can do to support artists and grants that we have out there for artists, I don't want to make income one of the criteria of this, but I do think that people working in the literary arts, are in a time of the economy, anything that we put out there in a grant form, because we are not doing a lot of the other grants that we would do, and a lot of the artistic things are closed and those avenues are closed. But the idea of, as Scott said, seeing it on the merry-go-round and having that bright spot to me is the way I would frame it. That said, I think coming back to the other questions, the program format being the first one, I think I'm going to throw out my ideas and then bring it around. To me, the program format is, I'm not looking for classes at this point, because I think that in the current times that presents some challenges. Curating the poems, I definitely think, is a part of the role, but I think it is generating, as we do begin to reopen our town, as we do begin looking into these projects. My fondest memory of the Poet Laureate was going to the reopening of Tenniscow Creek Park and having a poem read at that ribbon cutting. So that would be my expectations. I don't want to limit type, theme, or form other than to tie them to the city and the community. And I've already addressed, I think, how we do our outreach. I do think people are more online to social media now. I've noticed social media with my use and my friends' use, which was in significant decline, has gone significantly up. And we do have a new college, so I think there are some venues. And with that, I'll go around to see. Member Medina, do you have any thoughts on the 3 questions?
No, I'll defer to you on how you think this could be structured.
Great. Member Donahue?
Well, I like, that we might emphasize that some of it relate to our community, either by being read at the opening of a park or something like that, and being viewable on bus shelters or on the buses themselves, or in some of our public spaces at our new art center. But no restriction of subject matter.
Excellent. Member Bowders, I think you had something on this?
Yeah, I just had 2 minor points. One is just to think about the venue. I mean, AC Transit's ridership is down 90%, BART is down 92%. So we don't know how long that will be, and I don't know what Emeryville statistics are, but just may think about working with Amber on other places in the city where it may have the effect that we're hoping it will have. And then in terms of format and all that stuff, I would defer to you. I think the only thing I would put as just a suggestion, I'm not generally a fan of limiting the what artists use as thought, but I think if trying to put this out at this time, I would just suggest as one thing that could be prioritized is the concept of wellness. It's possible for people to use poetry to make art that gets at other emotions, and I think if the goal, which you stated, is a good one, without tying the hands of the artist, I would just promote wellness. That's the only suggestion I have.
Excellent. Vice Mayor Martinez?
I don't have any strong feelings on how the program is formatted or structured, but I agree with you that classes don't seem feasible at the time.
Okay, so I think the program format, and thank you for that. I think the program format, I think you've gotten some feedback from us on the idea of things that relate to our community. One thing I forgot to mention is I would love to have a recitation at our annual art events, maybe not this year, but at next year's event, and maybe one or two, whatever the appropriate number of expected poems for the run of the program would be. So I think that would be the program format. Hearing from the colleagues, type and theme, I think Member Bauer's point is well taken that we do want it to be uplifting and positive, although I do find value in saying it's okay to have feelings, even if they are not good ones at times. But that said, I think you've heard that we don't really want to limit type or form other than to encourage a focus on both our community and a focus on, I'm going to use Mr. Bauer's term of wellness. And finally, I think we will all come around to you with ways to help solicit ideas. Does that give you enough direction?
I think that gives me enough direction, and I think there was a question I failed to ask, which is, I don't think this has currently got an allocation, and so in the past, I think it was a $3,000 stipend to the poet, and then there were some ancillary costs around printing. For example, Janelle Moon's was with an inaugural poem, but was printed and released. So I think it had an overall budget of $5,000.
So not to be overly bureaucratic, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but the funding question was not presented to you tonight in this report.
Right. So I think that's something we have to come back to.
Right. And that's fine. We have until November to get this done right. So I think if you've got enough direction, I agree with city manager. And my thought is we'll come back and deal with the money piece later. I do want to thank my fellow council members for their support on this. And Amber, I want to thank you for your work. I know this is strange times, but I do want to keep doing some of the positive things that we do in this town that are not focused on COVID-19. Amber, you were going to say something, but I think I talked over you.
No, I was just concurring with separate items of the funds. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. It brings us to 12.7.
So, Mr. Mayor, it would be helpful if we could get could we get a vote on 12.6?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not on my thing to do a vote. Okay. We've provided direction, and if staff is okay with the direction, I'll move approval of said direction. And can I get a second?
A second there is motion. Okay.
I think that was Member Bowders. Is that correct?
Yeah, myself and Member Donahue both made seconds. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I have a motion by myself and a second by Member Bowders and a third by Member Donahue. We have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bowders.
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez.
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. Okay, excellent. That brings us to 12.7, which is just amending our calendar. I think everybody's okay with this waiving presentation. This was just moving a date off of the election so that we can all enjoy Election Day. Without objection. Go ahead. Somebody started to talk and stop, so I'm going to go to public comments if not hearing an objection to waiving the vote. Any public comment on this?
No, there are no comments. There are no comments.
Okay. I'm going to throw it out there for discussion. If you have a discussion point, feel free to speak up. Otherwise, I will move the item.
Just to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for having the foresight to make a better use of our calendar in November.
You're welcome. With that, I'll make a motion to approve the item. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Perfect. I was going to call on you, and it was Member Medina second. So with a motion by the mayor and a second by Member Medina, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. Okay, with that, that takes us to item 13, department head reports. City manager, are there any department head reports this evening?
I will defer to my colleagues. I don't believe, Charlie, there has been no planning commission meeting. There will be one later this week, so he will have a report back. And I think you know what's going on in the Public Works Department, so I think we can move through this.
Great. Okay, with that, we'll move to future agenda items from other council members, keeping my reverse alphabetical order. Member Medina, any future agenda items?
Nothing at this time.
Member Donahue?
Nothing.
Member Bowders? Member Bowders?
Do we lose him?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm sorry. I had one item, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I had asked the city.
Your window's closed.
Go ahead. Dang. I had asked the city attorney a few weeks ago about the possibility of the city of Emeryville having some temporary or urgency-related ordinance in order to provide protection for frontline workers in grocery stores. And I know that there were some legal questions. I met with his office about our ability to regulate in that space and to what degree. And I'm just wondering if we could have a action item to either give the council the ability to give staff authority and direction based on whatever analysis he can provide at the next meeting, to either send a letter of support from the council and the mayor to the county health officer or to another appropriate agency as it relates to things we'd like to see done, or to either set for a future hearing the opportunity for the council to take our own legislative action if that's what the legal advice yields.
Okay. Are other members supportive of this? Member Medina?
Yes.
Member Donahue?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I think that was the vice mayor as well. So I think we have support for that item. And did you have another one, Member Bowders, or was it just the one?
That was it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Vice Mayor Martinez, future agenda items.
I have nothing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. This is not really an agenda item, but I just want to throw it out there. In light of all that is going on and in discussion with the city manager, I think it's prudent for us to cancel our block party this year. While it is so far away in advance, it's unlikely that large gatherings will be happening, and I think staff has other things they need to dedicate their time to at this moment. And instead of prepping for that, and same thing for us as we're reaching out to businesses. So I'm making the difficult decision to cancel the block party because that is the nature of my mayoralship, is canceling things. But I just want to throw that out there. It doesn't mean we can't revisit it if things change dramatically, but I don't see that happening. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond to that briefly?
Please.
Just two things. One, I just really wanted to, before we go off air on this, because this is what happened last time, I just want to thank you for how well you've run these meetings, first of all, and just how, like, the manner in which you've done it has been extraordinary. I am on many of these for ACTC and air districts and other things, and our city council meetings are, like, they're very well run, and I just want to extend my gratitude to you because it's so nice to have competent staff and a mayor who can run a meeting smoothly like this to get us through this. So I want to appreciate you. And as somebody who just became, this is my first year as the umpire-in-chief for the National Umpires Association, and my predecessor of 9 years never had a canceled tournament nationally, and I've had to cancel 9, including our top 2 signature tournaments. And so I sympathize greatly with you about your year doing something and having to cancel things. And I just want to say I think the decision to cancel the block party, while difficult, is in the best interest of the community's health. And I think that what I'd like to just suggest is that the council preserve space for us to find time for us to have an event that can be of your preference in choosing at a time when it's more convenient to do that.
Well, I appreciate all of those thoughts and sentiments. I'm going to take no credit for running meetings smoothly. I'm going to defer to the city clerk, the city manager, the city attorney, and to the staff that, I keep forgetting that Dave is in his little booth running these meetings. And so I'm going to give them all the credit. I think the meetings run smoothly because I read the script and don't try to go off of it. Go ahead, Scott. Is that you?
Mayor, yes, given that we can't really have any big event, and we have so many more people walking around our town, it just seems like the perfect time to have our inside outdoor in action, where you could walk along and you come to maybe a QR code or a written description of what's behind those doors to make our walking experience in our city happen. We have this on the books, this happening, and I just see that perhaps our new poetry poet laureate could somehow integrate with this new side of our life, where we're not coming together in major groups, we're keeping our distance, but nonetheless we're out there walking and meeting our neighbors.
I'm going to echo what Member Bowder said about this being just such a great council, because I think, Scott, that's Member Donahue, I've got to be more formal here. Member Donahue, I think that's a wonderful extension of what Member Bowder was saying about finding alternative things. And so with that, unless somebody else has a comment, I'm going to adjourn the meeting on that wonderful note and say thank you to staff and to my fellow council members. It is 9:13, and we stand adjourned.